A photograph purportedly showing Germany's Black Forest is frequently circulated on social media, along with the claim that the wooded area caused 15,000 missing persons cases last year. While some people have challenged the picture and said it's fake news, others have openly discussed the topic and argued that there may be a lot of truth to it because it's been alleged that an unusually high number of people have in fact gone missing there. The Black Forest in Germany is known for its dense woodlands, picturesque landscapes, and folklore, but it has also been associated with various disappearances over the years that have basically turned into cold cases. While some stories and legends highlight mysterious cases, the region is not particularly notorious for ongoing disappearances. Now, most reported cases are often related to hiking accidents, lost individuals, or people who have chosen to go off the grid. The forest's vastness and, rugged terrain could make it easy for people to just become disoriented or lost. Additionally, the area has a very rich history of myths and legends, which can sometimes exaggerate the perception of danger or mystery. One particular case of a missing person is that of a woman named Scarlet. Scarlet was a student at Bad Lippensprungen, which is North Rhine-Westphalia, who traveled to the Black Forest area on September 4th, 2020 to go on a 74-mile hike. She's very slim, long blonde hair, and was wearing a red backpack, very noticeable. Now, the hike along there is obviously done in multiple stages. Scarlet had successfully completed the first 5 out of 6 stages when she disappeared and had spent the night at a hotel. Now, the town, that marks the starting point of the last stage of the hike. This last confirmed sighting of her was at 10:10 a.m. on the 10th of September. Scarlet was filmed by surveillance cameras while shopping at a supermarket. Now, she also sent a text message through WhatsApp to her family. It is not known, if she actually, started the planned stage of the hike that day, since her phone was last located in Totmos. Now, what's unusual about this last sighting is that there are witnesses for the other days and stages of her hike, but not for this one. Police, family members, and volunteers search extensively for Scarlet using drones, helicopters, and manned trailers, but nothing has been found. No traces of an accident, any of her equipment or supplies, just nothing. The police are still looking for witnesses, but their main theory seems to be that some sort of accident happened. It has been said that the only way she hasn't been found if it was an accident, so would be, if Scarlet left the main path as well. Yosemite National Park. Some people are born for the outdoors, and Michael Fiercery was one of them. This man pushed aside a conventional lifestyle to live one of adventure and exploration. In 2005, he decided to take a hike solo through Yosemite National Park, and not just the touristy areas, of Yosemite either, but the parts reserved for the very hardcore adventures. Michael was very independent and liked to live off the grid, so it wasn't until, his wilderness permit expired that people realized something was terribly wrong. A massive search was instigated basically, and even involved the Marines. Now, they quickly found Michael's backpack, which spelled very bad news and greatly concerned his family, of course. Unfortunately, no other trace of Michael has ever been found. This park is responsible for a lot of people having gone missing. One person on Reddit shared their experience and said on their first trip there, they were hiking up to the mist trail with a crowd in the morning. Someone started taking pictures of something on the hill on the left side of the path, not the side with the view. So naturally, everyone passing stopped and started looking. Just above the path was a baby bear, just vibing, walking around, super cute. It eventually started walking back up the hill, and that's when the weird thing happened. 2 boys, probably around 10 or 11 years old, just started walking up the hill after the bear. Now, off the path into the bush, no parent yelling after them, no one was with them, not even a parent standing around, that spot on the path, asking if anyone saw where their kids went. No idea what became of this. The person jokingly said, hopefully the mama bear, took them in as one of their own, and they now live as bears, but the best possible income would be that. So it's not just unexplained disappearances that happen there, but other weird, unexplainable things as well. Grand Canyon National Park. This national park is a vast mile-deep canyon carved by the Colorado River over millions of years, showcasing a unique geological history and diverse ecosystems in northwestern Arizona. The canyon's formation began approximately 6 million years ago, with the Colorado River carving its way through the Colorado Plateau. Now, the canyon is up to 18 miles wide and 6,000 feet deep in some places. The time of this disappearance, Morgenheimer was working for a rafting company called Tour West, which provided guided tours through the Grand Canyon. On day 6 of an 8-day trip, Heimer vanished in the Pumpkin Springs area of the park. The lead guide was speaking to Heimer when he was distracted by a client. When he went to speak to Heimer again, the young man was just gone. The guide didn't think much of it at first, believing Heimer had simply just wandered off, but when 3 hours had gone by without a word, Heimer was was officially declared missing. An extensive search lasting 6 days was carried out, but to no avail. Great Smoky Mountains National Park. One of the most famous missing person stories involving a forest is the disappearance of Dennis Lloyd Martin in the Great Smoky Mountains National Park in 1969. Now, Dennis Lloyd Martin, a 6-year-old boy, vanished on June 14th, 1969, while on a family outing at Spence Field in the Great Smoky Mountains National Park. Martin disappeared on June 14th while surprising his adults with actually his brother and other children from a separate family the Martins were camping with. He was last seen by his father going behind a bush to hide, intending on surprising the adults with the other children. Now, after not seeing him for about 5 minutes, and when all of the other children had returned to the campsite, his father became concerned and began searching for him. His father ran down the trail for nearly 2 miles until he was sure he could not have gotten any farther. Now, after several hours, they sought help from National Park Service rangers, and the search effort was extensive, involving approximately 1,400 searchers and covering a 56 square mile area, but no trace of Dennis was ever found. The disappearance does remain a cold case, with the National Park Service still investigating to this day. The haunted highway, Route 66 in Arizona. Now, Route 66, also known as the Mother Road, is one of America's most iconic highways. However, a stretch of this road in Arizona has earned a reputation for being haunted, with numerous tourists disappearing while driving through the area. Now, in 1959, a family of 3, including a young person, vanished while driving along the road. Now, their abandoned car was found, but despite an extensive search effort, no bodies were ever recovered. Years later, in 1975, a group of friends, including 2 women, disappeared while driving through the exact same area. Now, their car was found abandoned with strange symbols etched into the dashboard. Many believe that this stretch of Route 66 is haunted by the spirits of those who have passed in accidents or been executed along the road. Others, attribute the disappearances to the area's remote location and lack of cell phone reception. Now, considering the thousands of miles and hundreds of small towns this famous route runs through, including a few of America's most notorious ghost towns, it's no wonder that Route 66, is widely considered America's most haunted highway. But when it comes to spooky spots, there are a few that can hold a candle to the ones you find in Arizona, where Route 66 runs through some of the most notorious ghost stories in the American Old West. From the town of Flagstaff with its mountain views and haunted hotels to Williams, known for being the gateway to the Grand Canyon, as well as an energy vortex and spiritual center. This historic stretch of highway has been turning heads for nearly a century. When it comes to haunted attractions in Arizona, as well as famous sections of Route 66 that are still seeing, high volumes of daily drivers, there are a few that enjoy the lore and legacy of Flagstaff. Now, here more than anywhere, Route 66 is still alive and well, which is more than can be said for the slew of notorious ghosts that inhabit the sleepy mountain town, haunting their historic buildings and making Flagstaff a must-stop for paranormal attractions. Now, from a long-departed bellboy to a library that has seen its fair share of horrors down in the basement, it would be difficult to assume which corner of Flagstaff is the most haunted. But when it comes to historic haunts right off of Route 66, few have had the impact of the Weatherford Hotel. Now, it's in this popular downtown hotel that spirits can be seen roaming the halls at night, especially around the maid's storage room, and hotel staff have been through everything from bottles being thrown off shelves, lights and jukeboxes, coming on and in the middle of the night, and it just goes to show that when it comes to the strange and unusual, Route 66 Flagstaff has remained a touchstone, offering devilish delights alongside its outdoor attractions, world-class restaurants, and Old West history. Fourth on my list is Yosemite National Park in California. Now, in 1983, a family was exploring Summit Meadow off Glacier Road when one of the children discovered a severed hand and forearm. In spite of consistent searches from investigators, no other body parts were found, and authorities were unable to identify the victim or make progress on the case. Now, in 1988, a skull was found across the street from the site, but the Park Service still couldn't attach a name to the victim. It wasn't until 2022 that the Park Service, using DNA profile from the remains, named the victim, who was Patricia Hicks, a woman linked to a local cult leader who allegedly used LSD to weaken and disorient victims. Now, the man had been convicted of essaying women back in the 1980s, but disappeared before he was incarcerated. But according to a 2022 report by the San Francisco Gate and a 2022 episode of the ABC News show Wild Crime, investigators think the cult connection was incidental and that Hicks was actually unalived by the notorious serial person Henry Lee Lucas, who confessed to hundreds of slayings across the nation. Now, Lucas at the time of his arrest revealed details about the Summit Meadow crime scene that had not been released in the media. Now, still the details that Lucas gave regarding the incident and victim were deemed, circumstantial, so the case remains unsolved. Lucas passed away in prison in 2001, and the question of who is behind the demise of Patricia Hicks may never be solved. Lastly, I have Grand Canyon National Park, Arizona, and the newlyweds who disappeared. The Grand Canyon might be best known for its 5,000-foot walls, but the rapids at the bottom of the gorge are huge as well. Native Americans likely traveled the canyon for hundreds of years, but the first European American documented as navigating it was John Wesley Powell in 1869. Since then, roughly 100 people have drowned in the rapids. Now, arguably the most famous and mysterious drowning or incident happened in 1928, when the newlyweds Glenn and Bessie Hyde attempted to paddle their Grand Canyon on their honeymoon. Now, they were in a boat that Glenn had built himself, attempting a speed record paddle through the canyon that would also have made Bessie the first woman to run it. The Hydes were last seen on November 18th, and their boat was found intact with all of their supplies a month later on December 19th. Now, the boat was in perfect condition with all of the contents, including Bessie's diary, intact. Now, search parties, basically scoured the canyon, but their bodies were never found. It's possible and probable that the couple was washed out of the boat during one of the rapids and the vessel continued downstream without them. But Glenn and Bessie were both experienced rafters. A popular theory has emerged over the years that Bessie unalived her new husband somewhere deep in the canyon. Talk about a good honeymoon, eh? Another river runner, which is Emery Kolb, encountered the couple in the canyon and noted Bessie's hesitance to continue the journey and that they didn't have life jackets. In 1971, a woman named Elizabeth Cutler claimed to be Bessie Hyde, alleging that she attacked her husband during a fight with a sharp object and had been living a different life ever since. Cutler eventually denied the claim, and it was later rumored that the pioneering river runner Georgie Clark, the first woman to own a commercial rafting business in the Grand Canyon, was actually Bessie Hyde. Now, after Clark passed away in 1992, the Hyde's marriage license was found in her home, as well as a birth certificate identifying Clark as Bessie DeRoss, according to an account by North Arizona University. Now, DeRoss was her birth name. Why she changed her first name to Georgie is unknown. Georgie Clark was married twice and had a daughter who passed away in a bicycle accident. We don't have enough info to say, Clark was the Bessie who disappeared in the Grand Canyon, and some historians have discounted the idea.
All right, I think I'm going to kick off today with a case from Detroit, Michigan. The mystery of the disappearance of Phyllis Ann Flynn is one that lingers, casting a shadow over the years that have passed since that fateful night in May of 1988, which was before I was born. It's a puzzle that has defied resolution, leaving family and investigators grasping at straws in their quest for answers. After a birthday celebration at the Hotel Yorba in Detroit, Flynn vanished without a trace. The circumstances surrounding her disappearance are as mysterious as the hotel itself. She had requested that her father pick her up, a plea that would echo throughout the years as a haunting reminder of the unanswered questions. Now, the timeline of events is hauntingly sparse. A few days after her birthday, Flynn called home, signaling her desire to be retrieved from the Hotel Yorba. However, when her father arrived, she had evaporated into thin air, leaving behind an eerie void, and nobody has heard from her since. In the years that followed, the case went cold, a perplexing enigma with no breakthroughs. The detective assigned to Flynn's case retired, and the shadows seemed to close in on the scant leads. But even as the official investigation drew to a close, a glimmer of hope persisted among those determined to unravel the mystery. A family friend and a diligent Michigan State police detective breathed some new life into the cold case back in 2014, so about a decade ago, reigniting the flame of inquiry. The Community United Effort Center for Missing Persons brought national attention to Flynn's disappearance, thrusting it into the spotlight of awareness-building efforts. The passage of time has not dimmed the resolve of those seeking closure. The Missing in Michigan campaign, led by Detective Sarah Krebs, has tirelessly worked to unearth fresh clues. The story of Phyllis Flynn found its place on billboards, a visual plea for information that could hopefully pierce through the fog of uncertainty. But to this day, the question remains: what happened at the Hotel Yorba? The void left by Flynn's disappearance resonates, a silent call for answers. The reward offered by Crime Stoppers of Michigan stands as an incentive, a monetary beacon beckoning anybody with information to step forward. But with the passage of 36 years, the harsh reality is lingering. Flynn's family, against the odds, clings to hope that she might still be alive. But sadly, the Hotel Yorba, once a backdrop to a birthday celebration, now stands as a silent witness to a disappearance that continues to baffle those who seek resolution.
Aith Castle. Aith Castle is a hotbed of paranormal activity, standing tall on a hill overlooking the picturesque Scottish landscape. But don't be fooled by its stunning facade. This place has a dark and mysterious history that goes way back. One of the most famous ghostly residents is the Green Lady. Guys, what color do you think she wears? I'll give you 3 seconds, huh? What's that? That's right, green. She's known for her emerald attire and is often seen wandering the castle's halls and gardens. It's believed that she was a lover of one of the past lords of the castle, and when she passed, her spirit remained in the castle, forever searching aimlessly for her great lost love. Some visitors have reported feeling a sudden drop in temperature when she's around, and others have even claimed to catch a glimpse of her translucent green figure. Then there's the Grey Lady, who haunts the chapel. She's known to let out ear-splitting screams and often appears distressed. I mean, she's probably upset because people decided to name her such a boring name. I'd be upset too. The story behind her origin remains a mystery to all, but her apparitions have left more than a few visitors wildly unsettled. If you're into a bit of a mystery, which I'm assuming you are, you'll love the Hidden Chamber at Aith Castle. The Hidden Chamber is a secret room that was discovered behind a bookshelf, and it is supposedly home to some paranormal anomalies. People have reported hearing unnerving whispers and disembodied voices in there, and some have even seen shadowy figures lurking in the darkness, even when there's no one there. Reports of people witnessing knocking and tapping sounds that echo through the castle have also added to the castle's reputation. It's not uncommon for guests to hear these strange noises when no one else is around, almost following them throughout the structure. Some believe they're communication from the spirits that still reside within the castle's walls. Now, I'm not sure if it meant in the walls, like some type of H.H. Holmes kind of thing, but I don't know. I kind of feel like it is. If you're thinking about visiting Aith Castle, be prepared for the unexpected. Guests have reported sudden temperature drops, the feeling of being watched, and even seeing objects move on their own. Cameras and electronic devices also tend to be pretty much useless to capture these strange occurrences, as they tend to go haywire in the most haunted areas of the castle. If you're up for an eerie adventure, pack your bags and get ready to explore the hauntingly beautiful Aith Castle. Just be sure to bring your ghost hunting gear. You might just stumble upon something unexpected. Number 4. 5e Castle. 5e Castle is often described as a magnet for all things spooky and supernatural, chock full of some extremely goosebump-inducing occurrences. 5e Castle is a grand and imposing structure located in Aberdeenshire, Scotland. It has grand turrets, towers, and beautiful gardens. It's truly a picture-perfect exterior, but of course, as we know, we can't let its picturesque appearance fool us. It's got a dark and mysterious side. Guests have reported all sorts of paranormal experiences, from unexplained shadows to the feeling of being watched. One of the most famous ghostly residents is the Grey Lady. Yes, another Grey Lady, different from the last. She's often spotted gliding through the castle's hallways wearing, you guessed it, a grey silk gown. The story behind her presence says that she was a bride-to-be who passed tragically and suddenly, right before her wedding day. Her presence comes with a sudden drop in temperature and a strange numb feeling throughout their veins. Then there's the spirit of a musician who's said to haunt the castle. His ghostly presence is often accompanied by the sound of a phantom fiddle. I'm naming him the Fiddle Lad. I'll go over with my cello and we can have a creative jam sesh. Fiddle Lad and V. I can see that going places. Now, if you're into the good old-fashioned apparitions, you'll love the story of the Weeping Stone. Legend has it that these stones, which were once part of a long-lost chapel, weep red metallic tears. People that have touched these stones experienced a series of misfortune and bad luck shortly after. If you're planning a visit to 5e Castle, be prepared for the unexpected. It's not uncommon for visitors to hear mysterious footsteps or disembodied voices echoing through the grand hallways. Some have even seen objects move on their own, and there's always the ever-present sense of being in the company of unseen entities. Jedberg Castle is located in the Scottish borders and has a rich history dating all the way back to the 12th century. But it's not just its historical significance that makes it so fascinating. It's the plethora of paranormal activities that has given this place its haunted reputation. The most famous of the ghostly residents is the spirit of Mary, Queen of Scots. This apparently legendary queen was held captive in the castle for all of 1566, and it's said that her spirit lingers to this this day very upset that she was left to perish in the dingy, musty halls of a basement dungeon. Visitors have reported seeing her figure, often in a mournful state, wandering through the castle's rooms and hallways. Some even claim to have felt her presence as though she is sending out a reminder of her tragic end. The castle is also home to the restless spirit of a phantom piper. Piper was sent to explore the underground tunnels beneath the castle, but mysteriously vanished without a trace. I'm not sure why they sent a piper to explore, but I believe that there is more to uncover here. A piper is not meant to explore. They're meant to add a soundtrack to explorers' journeys. His eerie bagpipe music is still heard echoing through the tunnels, as if he's still searching for a way out. Oh my gosh, Fiddlead, V, and the Phantom Piper. But that's not all. There have been numerous reports of unexplained footsteps, eerie voices, and even the sound of a horse and carriage passing by, when there are no horses or carriages. The paranormal activity at Jedberg Castle isn't confined to just one area. It's a full-fledged supernatural extravaganza. From shadowy figures lurking in the corners to inexplicable cold spots, it's a place where the line between the living and the dead becomes blurred. If you're planning a visit to Jedberg Castle, be prepared for the unexpected. Guests have often reported doors slamming shut on their own, objects moving mysteriously, and electronic devices acting up in the presence of the castle's spirits. Number 2, the toll booth. Nestled in the charming town of Forres in Scotland, the toll booth is an excitingly terrifying place where history meets the supernatural. The 19th century building and its grand architecture have a dark side, making it a magnet for ghostly tales and paranormal activities that are sure to leave any visitors in awe and fear. The toll booth was originally a courthouse and jail, which in and of itself is creepy enough, but since its opening there have also been a myriad of ghostly stories, earning it a reputation as one of the most haunted places in Scotland. One of the apparitions that roam the shadowy halls is the spirit of Hector Munro, a local man who met a tragic end in the 18th century. Hector's presence is often felt in the form of strange, unexplained sounds, an eerie touch, or an icy sensation when entering his former cell. If you're going into his cell and then you're freaked out when something scary happens, that's on you. Don't act surprised, you wanted this to happen. Hector's spirit is just one of the many restless souls that call a toll booth home. The building has more than its share of reports. Mysterious footsteps echoing in empty corridors, unexplained knocking sounds, and objects that seem to move of their own accord. It's as if the past continues to play out its ghostly drama in the present. Last suggestion, a mockumentary about the ghosts in here, like What We Do in the Shadows, but ghosts. But unfortunately, I'm not sure how possible my dream is. It's not uncommon for devices to malfunction or pick up bizarre readings when inside the building. Beneath the structure lies the basement, aptly named the Pit. It was a place of immense suffering for prisoners who were kept in extremely inhumane conditions. The energy of their torment still lingers in the heavy air, and some courageous souls, or audacious souls if you ask me, who venture into the darkness have reported feelings of intense unease, sudden drops in temperature, and strange disembodied sounds originating from the depths of the musty basement. Visitors have described an eerie sensation of being watched and an inexplicable feeling of dread that can wash over them suddenly. The fairy tree is a centuries-old oak tree located in the region of Doris, Scotland, and it is shrouded in both history and supernatural tales. This historical landmark is not only a cherished ancient living relic, but a place that holds hundreds of ghostly tales and legends that have excited and terrified visitors and locals for generations. The history of the fairy tree is deeply rooted in Scottish folklore and traditions. The tree has been long associated with the supernatural, as it used to serve as the focal point for various rituals and ceremonies, often linked to the mystical realm of the fairies. But it's not just the fairies that contribute to the mystique surrounding the tree. The gnarled and ancient oak, with its twisted branches and distinctive appearance, has become a symbol of mystery and awe. Its unique form has secured it a reputation as a sacred place, with some believing it to be a site of ancient druidic rituals. What adds to the mystique is the reported paranormal activity in the vicinity of the fairy tree. Some visitors have claimed to hear otherworldly music, akin to the ethereal tunes of a fairy's harp. Yes! My band is complete. The Fiddle Lad, the Phantom Piper, and the Wrathful Fairies. The fairies' music is frequently heard emanating from the area, even in the absence of any visible musicians. These occurrences, along with strange, unexplained lights and mysterious whispers, have led many to believe that the tree is a site of ongoing supernatural activity. While the fairy tree itself is not known to be inhabited by spirits, the surrounding area has its own tales of ghostly apparitions and strange occurrences. It's said that the spirits of those who were wronged in the past continue to haunt the nearby shores, seeking justice or resolution. These legends have been passed down through generations, and local lore often mentions witnesses' encounters with these restless souls.
Green Mountain National Forest. The Green Mountain National Forest, or GMNF, is the only federally managed national forest in Vermont, encompassing over 400,000 acres in southwestern and central Vermont, offering very diverse landscapes, wildlife, and recreation opportunities. Now, the Vermont State Police exists because of Paula Jean Weldon. Weldon was an 18-year-old college student who decided to walk the long trail in Vermont. Weldon hitchhiked from school to the trail, and when she failed to return for her studies, her roommate notified the administrators. They in turn, contacted the authorities, and a massive search for Weldon was undertaken. It involved the National Guard, firefighters, and even students from the school, which had closed to help in the search. But despite the extensiveness, nothing came of it, and the resulting investigation was fiercely criticized for being shoddy. Just 7 months later, the Vermont State Police was created to prevent such poorly run investigations in the future. Paula Jean was never found. Her family is still searching for answers. The community still wants to know what happened, and sadly, I don't think anyone ever will know. This is not the first and only case, though. It's been reported that this forest is responsible for the disappearance of an upwards of 20 plus people within the last 20 years alone. Ozark Francis National Forest in Arkansas. Many of the biggest national park disappearances start the same way. A family or group visits a national park, one member wanders, and no trace of them is ever found. It's an unsettling pattern that has led to many, of the monster stories that surround these national parks. It's also exactly what the poor Van Els family experienced on a summer day in Ozark St. Francis National Park in 1946. 8-year-old Catherine Van Els was playing with her siblings in the woods near her campsite. The brothers looked away for just a moment, and suddenly she was just gone. While many national park mysteries are there, or end there, should I say, Catherine's story somehow gets stranger. A huge search was launched, combing every mile of the forest. 6 days after her disappearance, volunteers wandered by a cave 30 miles from where Catherine went missing. Out crawled little Catherine, who casually just waved and said, "Here I am." Catherine had very little memory of the last 6 days, mentioning she ate berries and drank water from the cave. She made very odd remarks about sleeping in warm grass and finding herself in the cave, and always seemed very, calm about the whole ordeal, which was weird. Search and rescue teams were equally as confused. They had searched the exact area with equipment and dogs twice. Why had Catherine not been found on either of those previous sweeps? As strange as the circumstances are, the Van Els family got a rare happy ending to their national park missing persons case with the Bermuda Triangle of the Pacific, which is also known as the Columbia River Gorge. This place is located on the Oregon-Washington border and is a scenic and popular tourist destination. However, this area has been dubbed the Bermuda Triangle of the Pacific due to the unusually high number of unexplained disappearances and accidents. One such incident occurred in 1955 when a group of 3 friends, Jimmy, Bob, and Bill, embarked on a fishing trip in the gorge. Now, despite being experienced outdoorsmen, they failed to return, and an extensive search effort yielded, no signs of the missing men. They couldn't be found. Now, the most famous incident that has recently come back in the spotlight is the Martin family. Now, in December of 1958, the Martin family, Kenneth, Barbara, and their 3 daughters vanished while on a trip to the gorge to gather Christmas greenery. Now, a Ford station wagon believed to be theirs was recently found in the Columbia River, potentially shedding light on their disappearance. In 1958, the family never returned, and 2 days later, they were reported missing when Kenneth and Barbara failed to show up for work. Officials narrowed, their search after learning that Ken had used a credit card, yes, they had them back then, to buy gas at a station near Cascade Locks, which is a small Columbia River community about 40 miles east of Portland. Now, police investigated their residence at approximately 11 p.m., searching for any signs of foul play. The house had been left undisturbed, though. A load of laundry was in the washing machine. Dishes from the previous day were left out on the drying rack in the kitchen. There was also a substantial amount of money in the Martins' bank accounts. Now, a Ford station wagon believed to be the Martins was recently found in the river, like no joke, a few months ago. So this is nearly 70 years later. A diver by the name of Archer Mayo discovered the vehicle, and officials believe it could be the same car the Martins were driving when they disappeared. After 2 days of dredging, a crane pulled the Ford station wagon from the river. But get this, no human remains were found in the vehicle. This is an insane cold case. The Columbia River Gorge's, unique geography with its steep cliffs and powerful currents may contribute to the high incidence of accidents. However, many believe that the area is cursed and that supernatural forces are at work. Poveglia Island is up first. Now, there's an island just minutes from one of the most romantic cities in the world, and even the locals refuse to go near it. Boats slow down when they pass, voices drop, eyes look away because the island isn't abandoned by accident. It's avoided on purpose. Poveglia Island sits in the Venetian lagoon, and its soil is said to be made up of human ash, bone, and centuries of suffering. Now, for hundreds of years, this tiny island was a place where, people were sent when society decided they were already gone. In the 1300s, as the Black Plague tore through Europe, Venice used Poveglia as a quarantine island. If you showed symptoms like a fever, coughing, or anything else, you were loaded onto a boat and taken here. Families were separated, children were ripped from their parents. Once you arrived, you were never allowed to leave. The sick were herded into mass quarantine zones, and those who passed on were kind of burned in open pits. Those who were still alive but weak were sometimes thrown into those pits anyway. Now, over time, the island became so saturated with ash from human remains that later visitors would, report fragments of bones surfacing after storms. Centuries later, when the plague ended, Poveglia was already infamous, but the horde didn't stop. In the early 1900s, a psychiatric hospital was built on the island. Records confirm its operation, but stories passed down through fishermen and locals paint a darker picture of experimental treatments, isolation, and patients driven deeper into madness by the environment itself. The most famous story centers on the head doctor. According to legend, he began hearing screams and voices echoing through the halls at night. He claimed the patients were possessed by the spirits of plague victims, that were buried beneath the hospital. Eventually, he lost his grip on reality and climbed the bell tower, throwing himself off to his demise. Some say he survived the fall, only to be finished off by the very staff who feared what he'd become. Today, the island is completely off limits. Visitors who have illegally approached report hearing bells ringing, even though, the bell was removed decades ago, and others claim sudden nausea, dizziness, or overwhelming dread the moment they step onto shore. So this island isn't just abandoned, it's rejected. The Island of the Dolls, a nightmare hanging in the trees. At first, it feels like a prank, a strange art installation, something unsettling, but, harmless. Then you look closer and realize every doll is watching you. Hidden in the canals of Mexico City is a small island covered entirely in decaying dolls. Hundreds of them, headless, eyeless, limbs missing, hanging from trees, nailed to walls, stuffed into corners like offerings. So the story begins, though, with a man named Don Julian Santana Barrera, who lived alone on the island for decades. Now, according to local accounts, he discovered the body of a young girl who had drowned in the canal near his home. Soon after, a doll floated by. He actually hung the doll up as a sign of respect, but the dolls never stopped coming. Over the years, Don Julian claimed the girl's spirit haunted him. He believed the dolls were possessed, or that hanging them would appease her spirit. So he collected them obsessively from trash heaps and canals, never, really cleaning them, never repairing them, just as they rotted, and he left them exactly as they were. Visitors who met him said he spoke to the dolls, that he rearranged them at night, and that he believed that they protected him. But then in the early 2000s, Don Julian was actually found deceased, and he drowned in the same canal where the girl had supposedly passed away years earlier. Today, tourists that, visit the island by boat, and many actually leave shaken, though, because people report dolls turning their heads, blinking, whispering, or moving when no wind is present, and cameras malfunction, batteries drain rapidly. Some visitors even swear they hear laughter or footsteps following them through the trees. Now, whether the dolls are haunted or not, one thing is undeniable: the island is a physical manifestation of obsession, grief, and fear, hanging silently, waiting to be noticed. Hashima Hashima Island. Now, from a distance, it looks like a warship rising from the sea. Gray, solid, lifeless. But this isn't a ship. It's an entire city that was abandoned almost instantly. Hashima Island, also known as Battleship Island, once held one of the highest population densities on Earth. Thousands of people lived stacked in concrete apartment blocks surrounded by ocean on all sides. The island thrived because of coal mining. Families lived there, children went to school, life happened, birthdays, marriage, arguments, routines. But then in the 1970s, the coal ran out. The company shut the mines with little warning, and within weeks, the population just vanished. Furniture was left behind, classrooms still had chalk on the boards, and toys sat where children had last dropped them. Nature took over fast. I mean, salt air kind of corroded, metal. Concrete basically started to crack, and buildings basically collapsed inward, and stairwells now led to nothing. Apartments, kind of reminded of lives interrupted. Now, visitors today to actually describe a feeling of being watched. Wind kind of funnels through corridors, creating sounds like voices calling from behind walls, and footsteps echo where no one walks. The island feels frozen, not abandoned, but kind of paused mid-breath. Hashima isn't haunted by spirits in the traditional sense. It's haunted by absence, by the sudden disappearance of thousands of lives. Deception Island, this is Antarctica's volcanic ghost harbor. The name alone should warn you. Deception Island is a ring-shaped island in Antarctica that hides a flooded volcano inside. Ships enter through a narrow passage and suddenly find themselves inside a massive natural harbor, calm, silent, but completely wrong. In the early 1900s, whalers built stations here. Later, scientists and military personnel followed. For a time, it was one of the busiest locations in Antarctica, and then the island kind of reminded, everyone why it was never meant to actually be lived on. In the 1960s, volcanic eruptions tore through the island without warning. Buildings were buried in ash, equipment was abandoned mid-use, and entire bases were evacuated in a rush, leaving behind vehicles, fuel tanks, and personal belongings. Today, the remains sit exactly where they were left. Rusting machinery just kind of juts out of black sand beaches, and collapsed huts sit half buried in snow. Now, visitors describe the island as deeply unsettling. Fog rolls in suddenly, erasing the horizon. Sounds carry strangely. Footsteps crunch where no one is actually visible. Some expedition members report hearing voices or feeling intense dread without explanation. And in one of the most remote places on Earth, Deception Island feels watched, as if, the land itself remembers who tried to claim it. Hart Island, America's largest mass grave. Now, just off the coast of New York City, sits an island most residents don't even realize actually exists. There's no houses, no neighborhoods, no residents, just rows and rows and rows of forgotten graves. Hart Island has been used for over 150 years as a burial ground for the unclaimed, the poor, the unidentified, the abandoned, and the forgotten. Over 1 million people are buried there. Now, children, infants, victims of epidemics, prisoners, those whose families couldn't afford funerals. Bodies were stacked in simple wooden coffins and buried in long trenches, marked only by numbers. Now, the island was also home to prisons, asylums, and hospitals throughout its history. Suffering wasn't just buried here, it happened here. Access to Hart Island has always been very tightly controlled. For decades, inmates were forced to dig graves. Families were rarely allowed to visit. People who have been there describe an overwhelming silence, not peaceful, but very heavy, and fog kind of drifts between the trees. Old buildings are slowly starting to crumble. I mean, the ground itself, feels weighted with memory. There are no jump scares here, no, shadows darting between trees, just the very unsettling reality of how many lives ended without being remembered. So Hart Island doesn't need ghosts to be haunted. These islands aren't haunted because of legends alone. They're haunted because of what happened when humans isolated suffering, fear, obsession, and demise, and kind of left it behind. Some places don't want us back, and some stories don't need embellishment. They just kind of wait for someone brave enough to tell them. The Crescent Hotel doesn't ease you in gently. People don't talk about strange feelings or vague unease here. They talk about being touched, followed, watched, and spoken to by people who shouldn't exist. Perched high in the Ozarks, the Crescent Hotel opened in the late 1800s as a luxury Victorian resort. It was meant to be a place of healing, fresh air, and elegance, but that promise did not last long. Over the decades, the building changed hands and purposes, and one chapter in particular stained it permanently. Now, in the 1930s, the hotel was taken over by a man claiming he had discovered a miracle cure for cancer. He converted the elegant hotel into a so-called hospital, bringing in desperately ill patients from across the country. The treatments were fake, the promises were lies, and many of those patients never actually left alive. Guests today are told the bodies were quietly transported through the building, sometimes stored in the basement, sometimes removed under cover of darkness. Staff members say the atmosphere changes the moment you step into the old hospital areas. The air feels heavier, the silence feels intentional. Now, room 218 is infamous. It's said to be occupied by the spirit of a stonemason who fell to his demise during construction. Guests staying there report lights flickering on and off, voices whispering their names, and the very unsettling sensation of someone just kind of standing directly beside the bed. Then there's the woman believed to be named Thedora. Guests described waking up to find her belongings nearly rearranged, their blankets tucked tighter, or the distinct feeling of being watched from the corner of the room. Some even claim they've spoken to her, only to realize later no one was physically there. Now, in the old morgue, visitors report shadow figures drifting or darting across the walls, children's laughter echoing through empty corridors, and doors slamming shut without any explanation. Paranormal investigators have captured audio recordings of voices responding unintelligently to questions. Now, what makes the Crescent especially terrifying isn't just the number of ghost stories, it's the consistency here. Different people, different decades, same rooms, same encounters. People check in for a weekend getaway, some leave convinced they were never alone. The Menure Hotel sits calmly beside the Alamo, but its calm is deceptive. This building stands on land soaked in violence, history, and very unfinished business, and many believe that energy just never dissipated. Opened in the late 1850s, the Menure quickly became a gathering place for soldiers, politicians, and powerful figures, but alongside, its prestigious guests came demise, heartbreak, and betrayal. One of the most commonly reported spirits is a woman known as Sally. She was chambermaid who lived and worked inside the hotel. Now, according to long-standing accounts, her life ended violently, and she actually never truly left. Staff members say they've seen her pushing a cleaning cart through empty hallways late at night. Guests report feeling their blankets tugged, their pillows adjusted slightly, or someone just sitting briefly on the edge of their bed before disappearing. But, Sally isn't alone. There are reports of children running through the halls laughing, only for staff to discover no children are actually staying on that floor. Some guests claim to hear heavy boots pacing above them, even when no one is checked into the rooms overhead. Now, the bar area is especially active. Patrons describe glasses moving on their own, cold gusts of air passing through closed rooms, and the very unmistakable smell of cigar smoke lingering in places where smoking hasn't been allowed for decades. Now, some believe the spirits of former soldiers still gather there, kind of replaying conversations that ended long ago. Others believe the hotel itself absorbed too much history to ever truly rest. Now, guests often say the same thing after staying at the Menure. They didn't believe in ghosts before they arrived, but they weren't so sure once they left. The Stanley Hotel doesn't jump out at you with screams or shadows. It works slowly, quietly, and that's what makes it dangerous. Set against the mountains of Colorado, this grand early 1900s hotel inspired one of the most famous horror stories of all time. But the stories that come from the Stanley didn't start with fiction. They started with guests who couldn't explain what they were experiencing. People report hearing piano music echoing through empty ballrooms. Others describe children laughing in the hallways late at night, even when the hotel is nearly empty. Now, room 217 is the most notorious. Guests staying there report doors opening and closing on their own, lights switching without any explanation, and a very intense feeling of just being watched while trying to sleep. Now, some refuse to stay the entire night, and I don't blame them. The original owners are believed to still appear from time to time, dressed formally, silently observing guests that, and then they vanish just without a trace. What makes the Stanley especially unsettling is is how gentle the hauntings feel at first. Nothing aggressive, nothing overly violent, just enough to make you question your own senses. And then it escalates. People wake up with handprints on mirrors that weren't there before. Voices are heard calling names that don't belong to anyone currently staying at the hotel, and security cameras have captured doors moving on their own. The Stanley doesn't chase you, it waits. And for many guests, that's a lot worse. The Cecil Hotel doesn't feel haunted in a traditional way, it feels cursed. Now located in downtown Los Angeles, the Cecil has been linked to demise, violence, and despair for decades. Serial slayers once stayed there, countless, unalivings occurred inside its walls, but one story pushed the Cecil into global notoriety. A young woman named Elisa Lam checked into the hotel and simply vanished. Now, days later, security footage showed her inside an elevator, behaving erratically, pressing a whole bunch of buttons, hiding, peering into the hallway as if something unseen was approaching her. Now, weeks later, her body actually was found in a rooftop water tank. The footage went absolutely viral. You'd have to be living under a rock to not know this one. The theories exploded. People around the world dissected every movement, every gesture, every shadow. Some believed she was being followed. Others believed she was being influenced by something supernatural inside the building. I mean, guess who stayed at the Cecil before and after reported strange noises, doors slamming, footsteps pacing outside their rooms, and just this sense of dread. Now, even those who dismiss paranormal explanations admit something about the Cecil just feels wrong. The building seems to attract tragedy like gravity. I mean, renovations have tried to cleanse its, reputation. New names, new paint, new management, but the stories don't stop. I mean, some places don't need ghosts to be haunted. The history alone is enough. The Copper Queen Hotel feels different from the others. Now, the haunting here are quieter, it's closer, it's a little more personal. Built at the height of Arizona's mining boom, the Copper Queen has hosted miners, politicians, and travelers for over a century. And many people believe some of them never just checked out. I mean, the most frequently mentioned spirit is a woman believed to have passed away after a broken heart. Now, guests report hearing very soft footsteps following them down hallways, only to turn around and find no one's actually there. Male guests often report something far more disturbing, a woman's voice whispering directly into their ear when they're alone, which might be nice sometimes, but usually isn't. Not shouting, not screaming, just close enough to make the hairs on their neck stand up, and not in a good way. Others report feeling a presence sit beside them on the bed, or seeing a woman dancing at the bottom of the stairs before vanishing mid-step. Now, the Copper Queen doesn't rely on jump scares. It invades personal space, and for many guests, that makes it completely unforgettable. The Parrin family haunting. Have you ever felt like someone was watching you in your own home? Multiply that by 5, and then imagine that someone wants you gone from your own home, or even deceased. The Parrin family lived through it for years. In 1971, Roger and Carolyn Parrin, along with their 5 daughters, moved into an 18th century farmhouse in Rhode Island. At first, it seemed like a charming old property, but soon the family realized they were not alone. The girls reported hearing voices in the late of night. Objects disappeared and reappearing, doors slammed without warning or anyone there to actually slam it, and the family dog refused to enter the house, which is just sad, to be honest. I mean, the most frightening presence, though, was a womanly figure in a gray dress, often described as tall, thin, and with a crooked neck. Sometimes she appeared loving, brushing the girls' hair. Other times she turned violent, pinching, slapping, and even threatening them. Now, Lorraine Warren believed this was the spirit of Bathsheba Sherman, a woman who lived in the area during the 1800s. Local legends said Bathsheba had sacrificed her own infant to the devil, and when accused of witchcraft, she cursed the land before unaliving herself. The Parrin children began waking up with bruises and scratches. Carolyn, the mother, was especially targeted. On one occasion, her body was overtaken during a seance conducted by the Warrens. She spoke in strange voices, her chair levitated, and she screamed with such force that family members thought she would literally pass away. Roger, terrified for his wife's life, demanded the Warrens leave the house immediately. The parents endured the haunting for nearly a decade before they could finally move out. Even decades later, the daughters have spoken publicly describing the horrors they faced, voices whispering their names, dark figures standing at the foot of their beds, and the feeling that their house wanted to consume them. This case became the inspiration for the film The Conjuring, but the reality was far more disturbing. I mean, unlike in Hollywood, there was no happy resolution for the parents. Parrins, the horse simply became part of their lives. Annabelle, the doll that came alive. Now imagine this, if you will. You wake up in the middle of the night, frozen in bed, unable to move, and suddenly you feel a small pair of arms climbing onto your chest. You look down and the doll sitting in your living room earlier that night is now on top of you, its lifeless button eyes staring directly into yours. That's exactly what one man described before he discovered 3 horrific scratches across his chest. The story of Annabelle begins in 1970 when 2 young nursing students in Hartford, Connecticut received a Raggedy Ann doll as a gift. Well, one of the girls did. Now, at first, it was nothing more than a cute, kind of roughed up looking doll, but almost immediately they began noticing very strange behavior. The doll would be left in one room, only to be discovered in another. Sometimes it would be slumped in a chair with its legs crossed, other times kneeling on the floor as if it was praying. Soon, scraps of paper appeared around the apartment, basically with chilling messages like "help us" or "help me." Now, neither of the women had written on it, nor did they keep any writing stuff near the doll. The haunting escalated though when Lou, a fiance of one of the roommates, had a terrifying encounter. He was napping when he felt paralyzed, unable to move as the doll climbed onto his chest. Seconds later, he felt a burning pain, and when he finally regained control, he pulled up his shirt to find long claw marks kind of right across his stomach. Now, the woman contacted a medium who told them the spirit of a little girl named Annabelle Higgins had attached itself to the doll. Believing it to be harmless, they gave the spirit permission to stay, but Ed and Lorraine Warren, who were called in shortly after, strongly disagreed. Lorraine insisted this was not the spirit of a young child, but a demonic entity masquerading as one, something that had been manipulating the girls into letting it remain. Fearing that the spirit's endgame was possession, the Warrens removed the doll from the apartment. They performed a cleansing and brought it back to their occult museum in Monroe, Connecticut. Now, to this day, Annabelle is locked in a glass case with a very large warning sign that says "positively do not open." Ed often claimed the doll had been responsible for at least one man's demise after a visitor to the museum mocked Annabelle. He supposedly crashed his motorcycle and passed away hours later. This wasn't just a creepy toy. To the Warrens, Annabelle was one of the most dangerous artifacts they had ever encountered, a symbol of something dark and intelligent that used innocence as a disguise. The Smurl haunting. Now, imagine your family dog hurled across the room by invisible hands. Imagine hearing screams through the walls, being scratched by unseen claws, and even attacked in your sleep. For the Smurl family, this wasn't imagination, it was their daily life. In 1974, Jack and Janet Smurl moved into a duplex in Pennsylvania. Almost immediately, strange paranormal activity began. Dark stains appeared on walls and floors despite, repeated cleaning, and unexplained foul odors kind of filled the home, often smelling like rotting flesh or something like that. Now, the haunting escalated quite quickly. Jack and Janet claimed they were physically attacked, and Jack reported being scratched and said he was even essayed by a demonic entity, and Janet described similar attacks as well. The couple's daughters were tormented by nightmares and saw black shadowy figures kind of lurking in the corners of their room. Their dog was repeatedly picked up and thrown across the room by unseen forces, and loud pounding sounds kind of reverberated through the house at night, shaking the walls. Religious items were destroyed or thrown to the ground as well, and when the Warrens were called in, they determined the house was infested with demons. Ed claimed, he recorded more than 40 hours of audio containing unexplained knocks, growls, and screams, and priests attempted several exorcisms, but the attacks continued. The Smurls endured the haunting for nearly 15 years, and critics dismissed their story as, exaggeration, but to the Smurl family, it was very real, and the trauma stayed with them long after they left the house. The Brookfield Devil Made Me Do It case. Now, in 1981, an unaliving shocked a very quiet Connecticut town, but what stunned the nation was the defense. A man claimed he was possessed by a demon when he attacked his victim, and standing behind him in court was Ed and Lorraine Warren. Now, Arn Cheyenne Johnson was a 19-year-old living with his fiancee, Debbie Glatzel. Now, Debbie's younger brother, David, had been experiencing terrifying possessions. He would thrash violently, growl in strange voices, and describe visions of a demonic beast with hooves and horns. Now, the Warrens were brought in to help, and during one exorcism attempt, Arn challenged the demon, shouting that it should leave David alone and take him instead. Now, according to the Warrens, that's exactly what happened. Months later, he was working for his landlord, Alan Bono, and the two men argued, and in a sudden fit, Arn basically attacked Bono multiple times with a pocket weapon, unaliving him. Now, witnesses described this behavior as possessed, claiming his eyes looked wild and his voice changed, and when the case went to trial, his lawyer attempted a groundbreaking defense, not guilty by reason of demonic possession. This was the first time in U.S. U.S. history that such a plea was entered into court. Now, the Warrens testified, insisting that a demon had indeed taken control of him. The judge, however, rejected the argument, stating that demonic possession could never be proven in a court of law, and he was convicted and sentenced to 10 to 20 years, though he only served just 5, which is crazy. Now, the case made international headlines and cemented the Warrens' reputation as controversial figures who weren't afraid to take the supernatural into the public eye. It also became the basis for the best-selling book, and decades later, The Conjuring, The Devil Made Me Do It. To this day, Aaron and Debbie insist the possession was real, and the Warrens considered this case one of the most dangerous of their entire career. The Amityville Horror House. Now, back in September of 1977, Jay Anson published a book called The Amityville Horror, which would later become the basis of a series of films released from 1979 onwards. Now, the book is claimed to be based on the paranormal experience of the Lutz family, a case which of course led to many controversies and widespread attention. Now, back in November of 1974 though, Ronald DeFeo Jr. unalived 6 members of his family at 112 Ocean Avenue in a suburban neighborhood in Amityville. He was ultimately convicted of second-degree you-know-what and was sentenced to 6 life sentences, with him passing away in custody just March of 2021. Now, DeFeo had reported that voices had told him to hurt his family. Whether these claims were true, we don't really know. But in December of 1975, George and Kathy Lutz and their 3 children moved into the same home, and after just 28 days, they fled the house, claiming to have been terrorized by paranormal entities while living there. Now, on the evening of March 6, 1976, the home was investigated by Ed and Lorraine Warren, along with a television crew from Channel 5 New York. Now, during the investigation, a series of pictures were taken. One of the images allegedly shows a demonic boy with glowing eyes standing at the foot of the staircase. The Warrens quickly suggested that the home was occupied by malevolent spirits, and this is the case, the demon, the haunting that launched the Warrens to stardom. But don't think that that didn't come at a cost. I mean, the demonologists became a household name for the supernatural after their involvement in the infamous Amityville house, but the Warrens came in and determined that, there was psychic troubles even before the notorious slaying. So a demon was in this place causing a lot of problems for a long time, and the Warrens knew it, and they had to deal with it. Even with the help from the Warrens, they weren't able to actually successfully rid the house of the demons. So this is actually one case they weren't really able to crack.
So I don't exactly have a name for this next hotel, outside of knowing that it's somewhere in the UK. I know, vague, but it was worth telling today. Imagine a place shrouded in whispers and veiled in the unknown. A hotel that, over the years, has become an unsettling enigma, a backdrop to a haunting mystery that eludes comprehension. It's not your typical story. It's a tale woven with threads of uncertainty and shadowed by the inexplicable disappearances of 66 young people. Nestled in the heart of the countryside, this hotel, with its weathered facade, stands as a testament to a history stained by the unexplained. The corridors echo with the distant laugh of young people who once roamed freely, their footsteps now silenced by a force that transcends the boundaries of our understanding. The first whispers of the mystery dates way back, like decades, a quiet murmur amongst locals who traded stories of curious occurrences. As time unfolded, so did the tales of the vanished youths, leaving a chilling imprint on the history of this seemingly ordinary establishment. Each disappearance, if we're going to compare it to something, maybe a jigsaw piece missing from a larger puzzle, paints a spectral image of uncertainty. The missing people, diverse in their backgrounds, ages, and stories, all converge at this point, their common thread being a vanishing act that perplexes even the most seasoned investigators. The authorities, puzzled and haunted by the lack of clues, have combed through the hotel's history, interviewed witnesses, scrutinized every nook and cranny, but they've got nothing. The answers remain elusive, like ghosts slipping through the fingers of those who seek them. The hotel itself, with its creaking floorboards and flickering lights, becomes a stage where the mundane collides with the mysterious. An invisible hand seems to orchestrate a malevolent symphony, leaving behind a disconcerting silence in the wake of each disappearance. The local community, once welcoming, now gazes upon the hotel with a mix of fear and curiosity. Whispers in the wind suggest that the place holds secrets, that it harbors an otherworldly energy, indifferent to the laws of our reality. As the count of those who have vanished climbed, the hotel's reputation transformed. It became more than bricks and mortar. It was just this living, breathing entity with a story. The rooms, once filled with the innocent laughter of youth, now resonate with an eerie stillness, a reminder of those who stepped into the shadows and never returned. Yeah, that's not somewhere I want to visit. No thank you, I'll leave the mysteries there. I don't need to unravel them. Now next up we have a legend that I believe to be true. Many years ago, an English woman and her daughter, at the conclusion of a tour in the Near East, arrived at a Paris hotel at the time of the exhibition. They were given separate rooms, one above the other. Trust me, I wouldn't want to be in the same room as my mother. After resting for a few hours, the daughter went to go see her mother, but the room was empty and completely altered. Like new wallpaper, new furniture, new everything. She was panicking. She called the maid and then the manager was like, you're under a delusion. When you arrived at this hotel, you were quite alone. But the girl was like, no, we signed our names in the visitor's book, mother and I. So they brought out the visitor's book, and above the daughter's name, what the mother had signed, was a signature of a stranger. Now, it wasn't until about a year later that the daughter learned that her mother had died suddenly of the plague, and that in order to save Paris from, crazy panic and the exhibition from absolute ruin, it was hurriedly agreed by the authorities that the death should be completely hushed up, and that the daughter should be made to believe, by the repeated denials of hotel servants, hotel managers, and cabmen, and the proofs of, the changed room and the altered visitor's book, that her unfortunate mother never reached the hotel. Imagine, you go to take a nap and you wake up and all of a sudden, okay, mom's gone, and you're Delulu. The girl allegedly found out the truth in a letter from a chambermaid. So when the story was originally told at a dinner at the house of Arthur Balfour, at the time, British Prime Minister, they were all hanging out, and Balfour was like, yeah, I'm gonna guess the ending. Now, a journalist for the Pall Mall Gazette, I think this was around 1913, talked to the author who originally published the tale, a Mr. Clement K. Shorter, noting by this time, of course, we've all heard the story. What's the truth to it? And Mr. Shorter's like, no, I believe it happened. It is a heck of a lot easier to believe that it happened than it was invented. And given an illness under precisely the same circumstances, the French police authorities are the only police authorities in the world who are equal to coping with it so brilliantly. I can't imagine waking up and being told, hey, you're completely wrong. No, thank you. Now for a tale that cursed me to my core, Liz, Sarah, and the Cosmos Resort. 2 years ago, a seemingly ordinary vacation turned into a nightmarish odyssey for a pair of friends, Liz and Sarah. The backdrop? A hotel that, despite its outward appearance of renovation and cheerfulness, concealed a darkness that would shake the very core of their existence. So the girls went in the lobby, they're like, okay, we're gonna go sign in. But there was this feeling of unease that was just sort of everywhere in the air. The check-in process was marked by odd glances and a peculiar conversation with the hotel staff. But they got upgraded. Woohoo! Room 347. This room with a view that won Sarah over. Seemed like, okay, things are getting better. Maybe my gut's just off. Maybe I need a nap. The first night was uneventful for Sarah, but for Liz, the shadows whispered secrets that kept her awake. Strange scratching noises emanated from behind the walls, which, yikes, that's not a soundtrack I want when I'm trying to sleep. And it only got worse as the days went on. A hidden door, concealed behind a nightstand, revealed a narrow, ominous space that reeked of rust and bleach. Yeah, that's terrifying. As Sarah delved deeper into the mystery, she discovered a network of tunnels, a dark labyrinth that extended beneath the hotel. The eerie passageways, laden with the stench of decay, hinted at a sinister purpose, one that became much more apparent as time went on. Liz's disappearance on the final night of their stay plunged Sarah into a desperate search for answers. The hotel staff's nonchalant response and the dismissive attitude of the police created an air of conspiracy. Sure, because the hidden door that led to under the hotel with the stench of decay wasn't enough. Determined to unravel the enigma, Sarah returned to the haunted hotel, guided by an invitation that seemed to taunt her, if you will. The nights after became a harrowing exploration of the hotel's hidden layers. The H sections, neglected and avoided, hinted at a malevolence that defied, my brain. The discovery of a bricked-up elevator shaft and the disturbing encounters in the narrow tunnels hinted at a malevolent force that lurked within the hotel's very foundation. So, fast forward, it's the final night, and in a desperate attempt to retrace Liz's steps, Sarah was led to an encounter with entities that, weren't of this world. Liz, or a distorted version of her, beckoned from the shadows. The nightmarish entities, with eyes that pierced the darkness, pursued Sarah through the dilapidated corridors, transforming the once grand ballroom into a grotesque spectacle. Now this whole mess reached its climax on the mysterious 7th floor. The revelation that Liz's encounter in the tunnel had birthed something malevolent. Something that wore her face, but harbored unspeakable horrors. Yeah, it painted a bit of a grim picture. The hotel's twisted reality, where time and space lost coherence, left poor Sarah grappling with a profound sense of dread. Now, this sad story concludes with Sarah's escape, but the psychological scars, they run deep. The fear of encountering those otherworldly entities, of witnessing the distorted face of Liz, that's gonna linger like a memory you don't want to have. The hotel, now a malevolent entity in its own right, kind of stands as a thin veil that separates our world from the other world, and not one you want to go near. Time to travel over to the heart of Santa Fe, and no, that isn't a cue for Newsies and Rent fans, so hush. Nestled within the walls of the La Posada Hotel lies a tale that, it's gonna give you some nightmares, folks. That's a narrative steeped in mystery, spectral apparitions, and unexplained phenomena. Cool, we got the whole trifecta. Room 256, once the abode of Julia Staub, echoes with the whispers of a bygone era, where the living and the dead seem to converge in a dance of the paranormal. Is it a ballet? So Chuck Barone, a vigilant security guard, recounted an eerie encounter that unfolded in this specific room of the hotel. In the company of a bellhop and a group of tourists, they approached said room, room 256, responding to a mysterious voice emanating from within. "I'm in here," it beckoned, yet upon investigation, the room was empty, with its windows locked from the inside, so there was no getting out of there. There was a phantom presence. Unseen, but you felt it. The paranormal enigma extended way beyond Chuck's story, by the way. His son John, a fellow guardian of the hotel secrets, if you will, witnessed a ghostly face in the men's room mirror. It was a woman's face staring back at him, sending a shiver right down his spine, and this inexplicable encounter left him pale and shaken, which, yeah, that tracks. Ross Weisenhoff, once a skeptic, found himself entangled in the spectral tapestry of the hotel as well. Awakening in the middle of the night, he noticed a luminescent figure at the foot of his bed. This entity morphed into the ethereal form of a woman, fixating on him with an otherworldly gaze. Now, this encounter shattered his skepticism, prompting a swift, "I'm getting out of here," as you do. The genesis of these ghostly manifestations lies in the tragic history of Julia, the lady of the mansion turned spectral hostess. She was once the vibrant center of Santa Fe's social tapestry, but fell into self-imposed exile after the loss of her 8th spawn. The Grand Mansion, a testament to love and opulence, transformed into the La Posada Hotel in 1936. Enter Christopher Chacon, a seeker of truth from the Organization of Scientific Investigation and Research. Alongside a team of experts, he delved into the paranormal intricacies of the hotel. Physical, psychological, and electrical examinations were conducted, leaving no stone unturned. 12 hours in isolation within the bedroom that's, doing all the bad things, monitoring the environment for any spectral stirrings. Infrared technology and night vision equipment were brought in, but despite the diligence, the source of the haunting remained elusive. Which, okay, we'll let you be. Ghosty ladies can do what you want. I would like to live.
Alcatraz, the night 3 men walked into the ocean and vanished. Alcatraz was built to erase people, not rehabilitate them, not save them, erase them. Surrounded by freezing water, razor-sharp currents, and sheer rock cliffs, Alcatraz wasn't meant to be escaped. It was meant to make men disappear long before they ever passed away. And yet, on a quiet night in June of 1962, 3 inmates stepped out of their cells and vanished into the darkness, and the truth of what happened next has never actually been solved. Frank Morris was considered unusually intelligent. The Anglin brothers, John and Clarence, were strong swimmers who grew up working docks and rivers. Together, they noticed something guards ignored. The concrete around the vents in their cells was slowly crumbling due to salt air corrosion. Night after night, using stolen spoons and bits of metal, they carved the walls away millimeter by millimeter. They worked in silence for months, hiding their progress behind cardboard grates. Every night at exactly the same hour, Morris played his accordion to mask the sound. They stitched together a raft and life vests using over 50 stolen raincoats, sealing the seams with heat from steam pipes. This wasn't desperation, it was engineering. On the night of the escape, they placed fake heads made from soap, toothpaste, and toilet paper into their beds, complete with real human hair taken from the prison barbershop floor. Guards looked in, everything appeared normal, but the cells were empty. The men climbed through the vents, crawled through maintenance corridors, climbed a kitchen pipe, and slipped out onto the roof. From there, they launched their raft into the bay and disappeared into black water that officially should have destroyed them within minutes. Authorities claimed the men had drowned, but bodies were never found. Years later, strange clues surfaced. Family members reported receiving Christmas cards signed by the Anglins. A photo surfaced decades later, allegedly showing the brothers alive in South America. Even the U.S. Marshals reopened the case decades later, admitting there was no proof that they had passed away. Alcatraz closed shortly after. Now, to this day, no one can actually say with certainty whether those men, passed away in the bay or lived the rest of their lives free, while the prison that claimed to be inescapable quietly shut its doors forever. Moundsville Penitentiary. Now, before the prison was built, the land already belonged to the deceased. The West Virginia Penitentiary in Moundsville wasn't just another stone fortress for criminals. It was constructed directly on ancient burial mounds left behind the indigenous civilizations centuries earlier. From the very beginning, locals believed something was wrong with the ground itself. Opened in the late 1800s, the prison was overcrowded almost immediately. Cells designed for 1 inmate regularly held 3. Violence wasn't just occasional, it was constant. Now, over its lifetime, nearly 1,000 men passed away inside its walls from executions, disease, beatings, and as well as self-inflicted, implications. Now, executions were originally public. People gathered outside the prison walls to actually watch the men, strung up. Later, the prison adopted on electric chair, which was actually also known as Old Sparky. One execution went so wrong that the inmate was decapitated, his body falling one way while his head went another. After that incident, guards reported seeing a headless figure moving through the north wagon gate late at night. Inmates spoke of screams echoing through empty cell blocks long after lockdown. Now, some claimed the prison was never fully quieted. Even at 3 a.m., footsteps could be heard moving when no one was actually there. After the prison closed, paranormal investigators reported shadow figures, disembodied voices, and chanting sounds coming from the basement. Chanting that didn't actually sound English. Many believe the land never forgot what was buried beneath it. Moundsville shut down after being ruled unconstitutional due to inhumane conditions. The state walked away, the building stayed behind, filled with memories that absolutely no one wanted to claim. Old Idaho State Penitentiary, the place they called Siberia. Now, some prisons punish the body. This one punished the mind. The Old Idaho State Penitentiary operated for over a century, and during that time, it earned a reputation for cruelty that went far beyond bars and shackles. The most feared area wasn't general population, it was solitary confinement, known simply as Siberia. Siberia was stone, cold, windowless, silent. Inmates placed there were stripped of sound, light, as well as human contact. Some stayed for days, others for weeks. At least one man passed away there, not from violence, but from the slow erosion of sanity. Executions happened inside these walls as well, people being strung up, firing squads, and eventually a formal gallows room. One prisoner, Raymond Snowden, was executed and buried in an unmarked grave on prison grounds. His body never returned to his family at all. Visitors today report feeling sudden panic inside Siberia, overwhelming dread, and pressure in the chest as well. Guards once refused to work certain shifts there alone. Shadows are seen moving through empty cell blocks. Voices whisper names nobody recognizes. The prison did close, but the atmosphere never lifted. The silence inside feels heavy, as if the building itself is kind of holding its breath. Eastern State Penitentiary, where solitude broke men. Eastern State Penitentiary wasn't designed to house inmates. It was actually designed to dismantle them. Opened back in 1829, Eastern State introduced a radical experiment: total isolation. Prisoners were kept alone at all times. They ate alone, slept alone, worked alone. When they left their cells, they wore hoods so they actually wouldn't see another human face. This kind of sounds like a good plot for a movie. Now, the theory was reflection, and that would lead to rehabilitation. That's the theory. But the reality was madness. Many inmates developed severe mental illness. Some screamed endlessly, others went completely silent. The architecture itself was built to enforce psychological pressure. There was long corridors radiating outward like spokes, allowing guards to watch everything while inmates saw nothing. Now, in the 1940s, a group of inmates attempted a massive escape, digging a tunnel beneath the prison walls. How they got together to do this is a mystery. And although most were caught, the attempt revealed just how desperate life inside had actually become. Now, after closure, visitors reported shadow figures moving between the cells, whispering voices calling names, and just sudden drops in temperature, typical paranormal type stuff. Cell block 12 is infamous for heavy footsteps and the feeling of just being watched. The prison now stands partially restored, but its walls still remember why it was abandoned in the first place. Alcatraz, again, this is the battle they tried to erase. Now, before the famous escape, Alcatraz saw something far worse. In 1946, a violent uprising erupted inside the prison, later known as the Battle of Alcatraz. 4 inmates overpowered guards, seized weapons, and actually attempted to take control of the prison, but their plan failed when they couldn't access the yard. What followed, though, was absolute chaos. The prison turned into a war zone. Guards were taken hostage. Gunfire echoed through narrow corridors. Marines were called in. Explosives were used to regain control. 2 guards actually passed away. 3 inmates were unalived as well during the standoff, and 2 others were later executed. The damage was so severe, parts of the prison had to be sealed off permanently. For years, this event was barely mentioned, overshadowed by, the later escape I talked about earlier. But those who worked at Alcatraz afterwards spoke of very strange sounds near the damaged cell blocks: banging, metal scrapping, humming, voices in empty corridors. The prison closed not long after, obviously. I mean, some say Alcatraz didn't shut down because it was expensive. It shut down because too much stuff has gone on there.